Welcome, everybody. My name is Paul Martinelli. I'm the president of the Empowered Living Community, and I'm just so excited that you are here today, that you've taken time out to be part of this community and to grow and be intentional about growing yourself and studying a phenomenal book, a book that has changed literally millions of people's lives. The Empowered Living Community is truly a really special place. It's a really special community. It's a community made up of people from literally all over the world, from many different tribes. Many of you are part of the John Maxwell team tribe. Many of you are with Daniel Amen's tribe. You may be part of Les Brown's tribe. You may be part of Life Success Consulting. You might be part of Brian Tracy's community. This is really kind of a tribe of different communities made up of people who are committed to helping other people grow, who are committed about their own growth and want to serve other people and want to grow themselves. I'm also, as I mentioned, associated with lots of different organizations. One is the John Maxwell team, and I just want to start real quick by giving a promo for my friend John Maxwell, his newest book, Change Your World. If you do not have this book, get it today on Amazon. You can get it right on Amazon.com, just released, talking about how not only you start by changing your world, but I believe what the John Maxwell team and the John Maxwell Enterprise under Mark Cole's leadership and the John Maxwell team under Chris Robinson's leadership will be doing is really changing the world, not just teaching you how to change your world, but how to go from me to we. So if you do not have this book, make sure you pick it up. And if you are part of an organization that would like to have a John Maxwell team member come in and work with you and guide you through this book and mastermind on this book with you, you can go to johnmaxwellteam.com, and there's a search engine there where you can put in your zip code and you can find a member towards you near you. If you are a John Maxwell team member and you are teaching this content, feel free to go ahead and blow up the comments, put in a link to your John Maxwell team website where people who would like to learn how to connect with you can do that. You're more than welcome to go ahead and put that in. If you're part of the John Maxwell team and you are teaching this content and you're offering classes on Change Your World and you'd like to serve the people who might be part of this community now who are looking, make sure you do that. Okay, so this is one of those classic John Maxwell book. John has written, I think, about 125 books. He's definitely the most prolific author in leadership. He has probably written the most leadership content than anybody else in the world. Of the top 5 leadership books in the world, John has penned 3 of the top 5. I think he's the number 6 all-time seller on Amazon.com. And John said that he believes that this is the reason why he was born, to write this particular book. So if you are a John Maxwell fan and you do not have this as part of your library is incomplete. So I would be completely remiss if I did not start this session by talking about this book too, about changing your world. I'm working on some new projects also, and now working with Dr. Daniel Amen and Dr. Joseph Mcclendon. Dr. Amen, you may have seen on public television specials. He is certainly the world-renowned expert on the brain. Joseph Mcclendon, if you've ever gone to an Anthony Robbins UPW or Date with Destiny, Joseph Mcclendon has been teaching alongside Anthony Robbins as his primary teaching partner for 3 decades, for 30 years now. And he's a neuropsychologist. Dr. Amen is a neuropsychiatrist. And so together, they've come together and they've started something called the Brain Revolution, understanding the hardware and software of the brain to put an end to mental illness and turn mental illness into mental wellness, a completely different approach. I really believe that what they're doing, that the Brain Revolution work that they're going to be releasing out to the world in April, is going to change the landscape. I think it's the most prolific work in the last 100 years in the area of brain health and mental health. So I encourage you go to brainrevolution.com, brainrevolution.com. All kinds of free resources. They'll continue to be putting out resources until they do their live event. I believe it's going to be on April 10th. It'll be a 2 or 3 hour live event where they will both be teaching for the first time side by side. So you definitely want to be part of that. Our current program here in the Empowered Living community is our Future Proof 2021 Mastermind Group. We've assembled nearly 20 experts, Dr. Daniel Amen, Joseph Mcclendon, of course, Mark Sanborn, Dr. Paul Sheely. Those of you who love Josh Rich is, Josh Finley. Josh Finley is partnered with John Manzano. So many of you would know Josh Finley as the author of the biblical version of Think and Grow Rich. He's been a phenomenal friend of this community. Josh Finley put together several different programs for the Empowered Living community. One of those programs is called At the Heart of the Matter. So the Future Proof program gives you access to all of these experts live, and you can go to youремpoweredlife.com, youремpoweredlife.com. It's not too late. The program, the first release starts this Monday with a live call with Dr. Amen and Joseph Mcclendon. If you would like, I've got teaching notes for today's lesson. I put some teaching notes together for this particular chapter. If you'd like a copy of my teaching notes, and if you'd like a digital copy of the book that I'll be teaching from, the version of the book that has all the line numbers and all the chapters, and another special bonus, send an email to info at paulmartinelli.net. info@paulmartinelli.net. And on Monday, my team is going to send you a digital copy of the entire book of Think and Grow Rich, the original text with all the line numbers that would match the book that I'm teaching from. They'll also give you a copy of my teaching notes for today's lesson, so you'll have those. And then also a special gift that will, I think, bring alive the study. Now, if you've got other versions of the book that can grow rich, there's several. Many of you may have a copy that looks like this. This is one of the older copies. Actually, this one is signed by Napoleon Hill. You may have a copy that looks like this. My original copy that I was given is this copy here. Now, when I was given it, it looked brand new. I've just studied it thousands of times, and so it's fairly beat up. But it was in 1991. I had failed out of school, grew up in Pittsburgh, and failed out of school and started my first business. I was 22 years old. I took $200, a used vacuum cleaner, and I was going door to door asking people if I could clean their office at nighttime. I was a janitor. I started a commercial cleaning company, and I walked in this one door, and the name of the office, you know, and when you go into kind of these strip malls or into these professional plazas, they have a placard that has, you know, the name of the company. The name of this company was called Ideas and Things. Now, I've been in the business cold calling into different companies for 2 years. I had never seen a company called Ideas and Things. I'd seen lots of different dental offices and chiropractors' offices and law firms and engineering firms, but I'd never seen a business called Ideas and Things. I didn't even know what it was. And as I walked in, the gentleman who owned the business was in the back office, and he said, "I'll be out right out." And as he came out, he was this middle-aged, I describe Patrick as almost like the 60s dropout. He was wearing kind of a Hawaiian shirt. I'm in South Florida. He's wearing a Hawaiian shirt. He was wearing, you know, flowered shorts, flip-flop shoes, and he must have been 17 wristbands. He had a wristband to save the whales, to save the planet, to save the trees. If there was something that needed to be saved and there was a campaign where you could, you know, wear a wristband, Patrick was all in. That's the kind of guy Patrick was. And as I kind of went into my spiel to sell Patrick cleaning services, about halfway through my pitch, he said, okay, yeah, you can clean it. Don't worry, sit down, but I think I can help you. And he reached behind him and he grabbed this book. And he asked me if I had ever read the book. And the truth is that I had never read any book. I could read, but I had never read a book. I'd never read a book from cover to cover. My program limiting belief, because I grew up with a speech impediment, I had a terrible stutter, was that I was dumb and stupid. I was teased and picked on by the other kids that I was dumb and stupid. As I navigated through, elementary school from first grade to second grade to third grade, the teachers really didn't expect much from me. You got to remember, though, in the 1970s, a speech impediment was considered a learning disability. I was not learning disabled. I had a speech impediment. I didn't actually become learning disabled until they started telling me that I was learning disabled, and then I kind of rose to those lowered expectations. And so I had never read a book. And so when Patrick asked me if I had ever read this book, I said no. And he said that he was going to mentor me through the book. He was going to take me word by word, sentence by sentence, chapter by chapter through this book. And he said that if I would do what he told me to do, if I would follow the book and do the exercises in the book, and that he would mentor me through them, he said that you will change your life. Again, you got to understand where I was. I was struggling. I was 22 years old. I was making about $20,000 a year. I was working every single day, day and night. And I was doing hard work and honest work, but I just wasn't getting ahead. My future certainly was not bright. It was just going to be more of the same. And I was a little bit intimidated, not by Patrick, but by the title of the book, Think and Grow Rich. See, every time I associated the word think, to me, that meant intelligence, right? In order to think, you got to be smart, and I didn't believe myself smart. And then this idea of rich. I grew up poor, and for those of you that if you grew up poor, then the idea, certainly you want to be rich. Certainly you would like to have financial wealth, but the belief that you could really do it. See, nobody in my family had ever accumulated wealth. There was nobody rich in my family, so I had no what I call cells of recognition. I didn't have an image of me being wealthy. And on top of that, I also had some negative programming about rich people. I thought that the way rich people got ahead was that they took advantage of other people. That was the only way that somebody could really amass great wealth is that they had so much because other people had so little. That there was only like so much of a piece of the pie, and that rich people kind of took their bigger share, and things just weren't fair. And so I was intimidated by the chapter, by the title, this idea of thinking, and then I also just lacked the belief. But I really do think through divine intervention that God put Patrick in my life that day, and I believed in Patrick. I didn't really have the self-belief, but I was able to borrow belief. And that's an interesting idea, because if you think about your life, most of your greatest accomplishments were built on the foundation of the belief that other people have in you. We borrow people's belief. For most of us, we can't see our own potential. As a matter of fact, if we do see our own potential and we claim our own potential, people tell us that we're arrogant or that we're stuck up and that we shouldn't. That we should have this level of humility. We shouldn't brag about our skills and talents and abilities. I remember listening to the pastor Adrian Rogers, where he said that level of humility is actually rebellion. Think about that. Humility is rebellion. Because if your potential is a gift to you from God, then why are you rebelling, bringing it forward? And why aren't you glorifying God by expressing this and claiming this in your life? And so, this idea of us seeing our own potential is a tough one. We don't see our own potential. Now, we can see potential in other people. I don't think you have to go long in your day to see people who have potential and aren't living into their full potential. You go to any Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks, go to any restaurant, and you'll notice the one or two people on the team that they just have a spark. There's something different about them. They have a little bit more pep in their step, and you can see that potential in them. But until we can see our own potential, we can never really fully express it in our own lives. And that's really the key of what Carl Jung said. He said is that until we make the unconscious conscious, it'll direct our life, and we call it our fate. And so I really believed in Patrick's belief in me. I knew that Patrick really saw something in me, and I knew that my way wasn't working. And who doesn't want to be able to have financial freedom? But Patrick went on to say that Napoleon Hill wasn't just talking about financial riches. What good is it to have financial wealth? And Josh Finley does such a great teaching on this in the biblical companion to this book, and you can get that on our website. He has an entire course, Think and Grow Rich, the biblical version, for those of you who are people of faith. It is a must-have for your library. But what good is it for us to accumulate financial wealth if we're void spiritually? What good is it for us to have financial health if our relationships are terrible? What good is it for us to have financial wealth if the health of our body temple is in poor state that we can't enjoy it? So really, we're talking about not just growing riches on the financial realm. We're talking about living a rich, whole life. I think that's what all of us want to do. And I would encourage you as you go through this study, even though we'll be looking at this through the filter of entrepreneurship, I encourage you to set goals in your life as you go through this study in 5 key areas of your life. Your spiritual growth, the area of your primary love relationships, the area of your personal growth and development, physical fitness or health goals, and then also goals in the expression of freedom in your life, both in freedom of your time and freedom financially. You don't want to just get rich financially and be one of those people who die and you're miserable, or you die and you're lonely, or you live a life that just isn't full, isn't rich. You may have all the trappings of the physical world, but I don't think any of us want to live that kind of life. And so Patrick was very, very specific about making sure that as I was filtering all that he was sharing, that I was looking at my life in all areas of my life. The interesting thing is that within a few short years of Patrick mentoring me through the book, my income skyrocketed. I mean, it went from $20,000 a year to $250,000 a year to well over $1 million a year. And it never really went back. And, you have to admit that that's a pretty staggering change. Now, on the version that I have here, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but it says that there were 7 million copies of this book sold. This is back in 1991. There's been millions sold since. But 7 million people didn't get rich. There are people who will buy the book and will never read the book. There will be people who will buy the book and start to read the book and never finish the book. I know I have bought hundreds of copies of this book, and I have given it away to family and friends, and their lives didn't change. There will be people who will read the book and they won't do any of the exercises. There will be some people who will read the book and they'll do the exercise, but they never really enter into the spirit of the exercises. And that's what this study is all about. This study is all about really getting you to enter into the spirit of the book, enter into the spirit of the teaching, enter into the spirit of the exercises. And now, Patrick made some great promises to me. And Napoleon Hill, as we're going to see here in the author's preface, if you could think of the author's prefaces as anything, in this book, it is a declaration of promise. He's making a promise that if you will read the book, and that if you will do the exercises, and that if you will follow along, really engage, he says that you can have anything it is that you want. Now, we're going to be using the original text of the book. The book was published in 1937. The first edition was published in 1937. Napoleon Hill was a young reporter 20 years before that. 20 years before that. So in 1917, he was a young reporter, and he had an opportunity to sit down and interview Andrew Carnegie. At the time, Carnegie was one of the wealthiest men in the world. And he was interviewing him on the principles of success and achievement. And over that 3-day interview, where Andrew Carnegie allowed Hill to ask any question, Carnegie ends up commissioning Napoleon Hill to write a book that the average person could read, understand, and apply to their life, and made available to Napoleon Hill access to some of the wealthiest, most successful people. So during the study of the book over that 20-year period of time, it's reported that Napoleon Hill interviewed 25,000 people. 500 of those people were considered the most successful and wealthiest people. As a matter of fact, in the book, he lists some of those names. You'll see Schwab and Woolworth and Ford and Alexander Graham Bell and the Wright brothers and Edison, 4 sitting U.S. presidents. And the book is then published in 1937. Talk about timing. Remember, think about what was going on in the United States in terms of the Depression in the 1930s. This was truly, at some level, an answer to prayer. It gave people so many hope. But you have to understand that it was written in 1937, so some of the terminology no longer reflects the shifts in awareness that have taken place in humanity. So some of the wording could be offensive at our level of awareness now, at our understanding, in the shifts that we've evolved to. We've grown as humanity. We've grown in our understanding. I mean, when this book was written in 1937, think of just the voting rights. Just think of the rights, the human rights that were and weren't given to people based on their gender, based on the color of their skin. And so, as we go through the book, I encourage you, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Harvest the good, harvest the principles, because the principles themselves are timeless. And at the time, Napoleon Hill wasn't using language that would have been considered offensive in that day. Again, hopefully we all grow in our awareness, and we all grow in our understanding, and we all grow in our empathy for other people, for our planet. So I just want to make sure that you understand that. Again, if you would like to get a copy, I'll be teaching from the book, but I also have teaching notes that I'm going to read from today, okay? So I'm not trying to memorize anything. Nothing's on a teleprompter. I've written out all of my own comments that I want to make, and I've written them down because they're important, and I want to read them so that I don't miss something. So if you'd like to get a copy of my teaching notes, if you'd like to get a digital version of the book itself for free so you can follow along in the study, and if you'd like to get another really special gift that would be a fantastic companion, I believe, send an email to info@paulmartinelli.net, not .com, .net. .com goes to a real estate agent up in Canada, so it's .net. info@paulmartinelli.net. And on Monday, my team is going to send you the Word documents from the notes from the Author's Preface that you can use when you're studying, and also the digital version of the book and another special gift. This is Think and Grow Rich 6. This will be the 6th time that I've taught the book for free. I've taught in the book, many more times than 6. I've taught this book, oh my goodness, hundreds of times to thousands of people. But through our free programs in Empowered Living, we have probably taught this to over 50,000 people. And each time we teach it through a different filter, a different lens. We did a study in Think and Grow Rich 3. That filter was through the filter of kind of our departure points and our arrival points. Where we are in our lives when we set and start the journey of goal achievement, and what is that destination goal, right? So our departure and kind of our arrival point. Where do we want to arrival? As I said, we also have the biblical teaching of Think and Grow Rich by Josh Finley, which is a must-have. If you don't have it, make sure you go to our website. He has an entire course. You want to get the entire course. I think on the website it's something like, it might be for $99 or $149 to get the entire course. You absolutely want to get Josh Finley's Biblical Companion. Get the book, get his course. I ended up writing a book called The 3 Missing Chapters for Think and Grow Rich, and I will incorporate those 3 missing chapters into this study as well. So again, don't forget, let me just hit this. You got to get your John Maxwell book, right? Got to get your John Maxwell book. Connect with the John Maxwell team member if you're looking for a study on values. If you want to bring values into your company, into your organization, into your community, there's thousands of John Maxwell team members who are part of the Empowered Living community. So if you're looking to connect with the John Maxwell team member, go to johnmaxwellteam.com. Go to the little search engine and you can do that. You can find one, you enter in your postal code and they'll connect you. If you are a John Maxwell team member and you are, watching this today, feel free to go ahead and put a link. If you've got a program based on this book that you're offering to the public, feel free to put it into the comments, okay? So that, we want to support the book and we want to support the movement that John has started. And don't forget, go to brainrevolution.com. Brainrevolution.com. Register for a bunch of free resources from Dr. Daniel Amen and Tony Robbins' primary teaching partner, Joseph Mcclendon. Okay, so let's jump in. We're going through the author's preface, and he says in every chapter of this book, mention is made of the money-making secret, which has made fortunes for more than 500 exceedingly wealthy men whom I carefully analyzed over a long period of years. We'll just stop right there, because if you go down to line 9 there, he says, he's talking about his meeting with Andrew Carnegie, and he says, Carnegie wondered if I would be willing to spend more than 20 years creating this book. If you're an entrepreneur, you have to ask yourself, would you be willing to start something, not knowing the outcome? When the person who's kind of saying, go and start it, who's encouraging you to start it, says, you're probably going to work for the better part of 20 years. You don't know if anybody's going to read the book. You don't know what's going to happen as you do all the work. You don't know if it's going to be a success or failure. Think of the level of commitment. He analyzed these 500 men over a long period of time. And I think for entrepreneurs, that really is probably our biggest challenge. Is that we are short-sighted, and we have to have we have to be playing the long game in our mind. Now, I'm not a big fan of people who say that they have to have, 5-year or 10-year, 20-year goals. I've never really done 5-year, 10-year, 20-year goals. I've done 5-year, 10-year lifetime visions that I've done. But goals, no. And the reason why is, if you think about it, if you would have set a goal, 5 years ago or 10 years ago, most of the technology that you would use right now to achieve it wasn't even birthed. So it would be really difficult for you to ever really achieve that goal because of the onset of and change of all the technology. I'm a big fan of having 30-day, 60-day, 90-day, 1-year goals where you've got some visibility for the goal itself. But I do think you have to have a long-term vision. This idea that you have, this business that you're starting, this business that you may be in right now, are you willing to stay committed, singularly focused? In Dr. Thurman Fleet's work in concept therapy, he talks about the intellectual faculties, and he says that there's 6 intellectual faculties, just as we have 5 senses, our ability to see, hear, smell, taste, and touch, and we bring in information from our outside world. He says that there's 6 intellectual faculties that we process information through that alters the vibrational frequency of our thought. One of those is the will, the intellectual faculty of the will, W-I-L-L. Now, he's not talking about willpower where we're kind of forcing our way. He's talking about will as it relates to our ability to concentrate and focus. This is our ability to stay focused on one idea to the exclusion of all outside distractions. Think of the distractions an entrepreneur is faced with. Just think of, just now, just with social media, all that's going on in the world, the polarization and division that's going on and all the arguments, and everybody's got to take a stand. You've got competing commitments, certainly in your outside world, but you've got competing commitments in your inside world. Think of the distractions just from your own ideas. If you're an entrepreneur, chances are you're like me. You've got an idea a minute. So I think what we have to understand here is that he says that there's this money-making secret, and there is a secret that he shares in this book, and you're not going to go hunting for it. I'm going to share what I believe it is. But notice that he did this over a long period of time, and when he started, he was being told that this was the long game, 20 years. When Patrick sat down with me and started to mentor me in the book, one of the things I wanted to know was, how long was it going to take? If you've been part of my teaching where on the 10 steps to creating a new belief, I say step number 4 is we can't negotiate with our dream. And so many times we want, as entrepreneurs, we want to negotiate with the time or the money or the time or the cost, the time or the investment. And so I asked the question that anybody would ask of Patrick. How long is it going to take me to get rich? And Patrick just looked at me and said, what does that have to do with your dream? Boom. What does that have to do with your dream? In other words, he's saying, Paul, if you're going to negotiate, what if I told you it was 7 years? Would you quit? Is that too long? What if I told you it would happen in 7 months? Would you believe it? What if I told you it would be 17 years? Would you still do it or would you quit? See, who cares how long it's going to take you, Paul? Who cares? If the starting point of your business as an entrepreneur is that you've got some timeline that if this doesn't happen by then I quit. Quit now. Quit now. Don't even start. Save yourself the hassle. Save yourself the challenge. If we go down on line 24, he says his experience with Charles M. Schwab and other young men of Schwab's type convinced Mr. Carnegie of that which is taught in the school is of no value whatsoever in connection with the business of earning or living or accumulating riches. So he's talking about Carnegie. He's talking to Charles Schwab. And he says Carnegie comes to this conclusion that having a formal education, acquiring, degrees, has nothing to do with a person's ability to earn a living or acquire riches. Now, that's slapped up against all of my programming. My whole life, I was told that you'll never amount to anything unless you get a formal education. He says, moreover, his coaching made fortunes for every one of them who followed his instructions. So he's saying here is, if you are one of those people like I was, if you have a limiting belief that says you're not going to be able to reach your dream, or you're not going to be able to accumulate wealth because of a lack of education, I'm a high school dropout. Now, look, does education help you? Absolutely. It's an advantage. But if we go back to what I was talking about before, potential, there's no potential in having an education. There's no potential in having a degree. There's no potential in, connecting with the right person. There's no potential in your idea or your dream. There's no potential in your business. The potential is within you. All of those things, education, working with the right people, having good partners, having a great idea, all of those provide you an opportunity for you to express that potential. They may give you an advantage, but there's no potential in them. The potential is within you, and that is so critically important for you to understand as an entrepreneur, that you are already complete. There's nothing new that needs to be added to you. Now, do you need to learn new things? Sure. Do you need to grow? Absolutely. Do you need to develop skills and talents and abilities? Yeah. But in most of those things, that, in my company, and those of you who've worked with me, I'm looking at I see Andy Hall's name go by. I'm not that good at a lot of things necessary to run my business. I'm terrible when it comes to understanding computers and softwares. I'm a mess. My team doesn't even let me go near Google Docs because I'm more apt to erase something or screw it up than I am to add value to it. I don't know how to make PowerPoints. I don't know how to do video work. I don't know how to do any of those things, and my business depends on all of those. But what I've done is I found really good people who have it as their purpose to do those things, and I've empowered them and resourced them and collaborated, in some cases partnered with them, and let them do what they really focus on. And you as the entrepreneur, you've got to stay in your genius zone. That's part of the faculty of the will. But you cannot think that because you lack a formal education, or maybe you lack experience. For some of you, I know many people who join the John Maxwell team who come in as new coaches and speakers. The number one reason why they never really get their business going is because they lack experience. They lack the expertise. And so they've got this self-judgment, this little voice inside their head that says, who do you think you are? You haven't written 100 books. John's written 125 books. Who are you? Compare yourself to John Maxwell. You're nobody. Nobody's going to listen to you. And so they never really get their business off the ground. And I'm just here to tell you that the world needs your voice. There will be people who will hear John speak and will read this book, and it won't land on them. See, we hear with our ears, we listen with our emotions, and as you bring your voice, as you bring your giftedness, as you bring your idea for whatever business it is, maybe it's a landscaping business, maybe it's a service business, maybe you're a karate instructor or a dance instructor, maybe you're a copywriter, maybe you're a software developer, maybe you're a fireman or a policeman. Whatever work you do in the world, there's a need for that. And you bring your own uniqueness, and that's what's going to connect with people at an emotional level. And that's what he's saying here. So the good news here is that the secret is not in intelligence. It's not in, having a formal education. So if you don't have a formal education, you're not disqualified. That was so important. I'm so glad that he put this at the front end of the book. We go over to number 62, line 62. This is on page 11. I'm aware of the time. He says, the secret to which I refer has been mentioned no fewer than 100 times throughout this book. It is not directly named, for it seems to work more successfully when it merely uncovered and left in sight. For those who are ready and are searching for it, they may pick it up. We have to be ready for it. And in order for us to be ready for it, we have to know what it is that we want. If we go over on line 39, he says, Mr. Carnegie will give you a fair idea of what the reading of this book may bring to you, provided that you know what you want. So he's telling us that we have to know what we want, and we have to be ready to receive it. I found that knowing what we want is perhaps the most difficult part of the entire process, because it requires us to think beyond our conditions and circumstances. For most of us, when we answer the question of what do we want, the first thing we do is we sort through similarity. So we look at our life and we begin to sort for what we want, and we begin to find kind of similarities in our life and say, well, I don't want this, so I've got this amount of money and I don't want that, and I've got this kind of, and so we can only see and sort through that which we're experiencing now. But if we were really to answer what is emerging from our soul, right? What's our emerging future? We have to see beyond our conditions and circumstances. This requires two more of those intellectual faculties: imagination and intuition. It's why both of those characteristics, both of those intellectual faculties, are chapters in the book. There's a chapter on imagination, and there's the chapter on the sixth sense, which is really intuition. But we've got to know what it is that we want. And again, the problem for most people is we begin to get a glimpse of or an awareness of what it is that we want beyond what we've currently created in our lives. We instantly think we can't do it. We instantly reject the idea. That's really the power of our limiting beliefs. It's not just that our beliefs drive our behavior, they do. And it's not just that our beliefs control the dominant vibrational frequency that we send out to the world, they do. The real power of our programmed beliefs is that they serve almost as a weighing station for our new ideas. And as a new idea comes into our awareness, if it's not in harmony with our programmed belief, we'll immediately begin to reject that idea. And we'll find all kinds of great reasons or excuses why that idea won't work. Many of you have been part of other studies. I say the only thing worse than an excuse is a good excuse. And so this idea of, I have a program coming out called Double Your Income. Now, I think most people at an intellectual level, if I ask you, would you like to double your income? I mean, how many of you would like to double your income? Be honest. I mean, I would. I mean, it's an IQ test. Who wouldn't want to double your income? Everybody would like to double their income. But to accept that idea as a belief that you could do it is so hard when there's no evidence in your life. So if we're going to be able to understand and apply the secret that's in the book, we have to know what we want. And in order to know what we want, we have to see beyond the similarities of our lives. We've got to sort through different distinctions. We've got to be able to tap into a different frequency of thought. We've got to see beyond our conditions and circumstances. We're going to have to use resources that we may have never used before or are underdeveloped. And so what I found in the study of this book, in order to kind of get rich, that most of the work that I had to do was on me. I would say 80% of the work that I had to do was on me, not the business. Not the business. See, Patrick mentored me for 3 years. He never once told me to do anything in the cleaning business. He never told me anything about marketing or sales. He never told me about, how to hire or fire, how to price jobs. He didn't tell me anything about my profit and loss statement. Nothing. Patrick never taught me what to think. He taught me how to think. And the process of how to think really required for me that I break all of my attachments to my old limiting beliefs. That the beliefs I held that had created the life that ended me up being a high school dropout janitor earning $20,000 a year were not the beliefs that were going to get me what I wanted in my life. We're not going to lead to financial freedom. Not at all. So we have to know what it is that we want. What would we really love to have? What would you love to do? And so I encourage you to do an exercise I called Any Given Tuesday. On any given Tuesday, someday in the future, if you could take a magic wand and wave the magic wand and transport yourself to 5 years in the future, and you can, you do this all the time. We use our imagination to see into the future all the time. We just never intentionally direct it this way. But if you were to take this magic pen and kind of wave it, in 5 years in the future, wake up on a Tuesday morning, what would you want that day to have looked like? What would you want your house to look like? What relationships would be in that house? What would it feel like for you? When you walked into your office, what would your day calendar look like? What would your schedule for the day? How would you be spending your time that day? And so, I encourage you not only to, focus on, what it would look like, but what would it feel like? Would you have a sense of peace? Would there be a confidence? Would there be a certainty? Would there be a joy in your heart? And I would encourage you to write out, to take a pen, not type, take a pen and write out your day, like you were writing a diary journal at midnight on that Tuesday, and you had to write what the day was like for you. So this morning I woke up and boom, and start the day. Chances are, if you're one of the right now, 981 people who are watching this, chances are you're watching this because there's either a longing or there's discontent. There's a longing for more in your life. That's what, if we think of the word intention, that's what intention is. There's an inner tension. There's both a pulling us forward, and then there's also this kind of discontent, right? We're stuck here in this discontent that kind of pushes us back. Stay in our tiny little box. Don't take the risk. It's not safe. And so if you could describe to me what your day would be like, that would be an answering to your longing and an answering to your discontent, what would it be? What would that day look like? Think of those 5 areas that I spoke about earlier. What would that Tuesday look like as it relates to your spiritual growth, your primary love relationships, your personal growth and development, the health of your body, the flow of time and money? Any given Tuesday. Just any given Tuesday, what would it look like? An average day, 5 years into the future, what would you want? And perhaps the hardest part of this exercise, the hardest part of what's on line 39 is our ability to suspend the requirement of knowing how we're going to do it. Because this exercise really is not logical. So we don't want to invoke, remember we said that there were 6 intellectual faculties: perception, reason, will, memory, imagination, and intuition. We don't want to use our reasoning mind, because this isn't really logical. If you invoke your reasoning mind and try to do this exercise with logic rather than imagination and intuition, your logical mind will say, well, you can't do that. How are you going to do this? How are you going to do that? See, it wasn't logical or reasonable when Patrick Hayes gave me this book that I build 5 multi-million-dollar companies. It wasn't logical or reasonable that those companies would generate $500 million. It wasn't logical or reasonable that the #1 leadership coach, and trainer, and author, and teacher, and speaker in the world would become a business partner of mine. It wasn't logical or reasonable that somebody like Dr. Daniel Amen and Dr. Joseph Mcclendon would be working with me as they bring forward the brain revolution. That's not logical and reasonable. So if you try to answer this questions, know what you want as an entrepreneur, we tend to limit our businesses based on our logic and our reasoning. Now, it's interesting because it's our imagination and intuition that kind of gets us and bursts our idea in the first place. And that's usually because of a high intensity of discontent. We get fed up, enough is enough, our back is up against the wall, we've had it. We're gonna go for it ourselves, or a longing, where we are inspired, where there's this level of passion, and as much as you're dreaming your dream is dreaming you. As much as it's a calling, you've been called, and you know that. But something happens along the way. Sometimes it's within 3 minutes. You get this great inspired idea, you feel like bulletproof, right? You feel just like on fire for it. And then you talk to a friend and they say, how are you gonna do that? And now all of a sudden, come on, you gotta be reasonable. In this economy, how are you gonna do that in 20? We still don't even know if the vaccines are gonna work. We don't know what's gonna happen in the economy. And just like that, the dream vampires come and suck your dream right out of you. You've got to defend your dream as an entrepreneur. And so as an entrepreneur, we've got to stay in this question of what we want. We've got to be really careful. We've got to be really careful that we don't limit the time that we dream to the birth of the idea. I think for most entrepreneurs, the only time that they really, really dream, is when they have that first initial idea. And then they get caught up in the doing of the business. I got to get a website. I got a landing page. I got to build an email list. I got to take this class. I got to start a podcast. I got to do this. And before you know it, all they've got now is a big to-do list. The dream was birthed in this becoming energy, in this becoming. And now all of a sudden, the dream is reduced to a to-do list. Your dream becomes a taskmaster. That's not what you want. As an entrepreneur, we want to constantly stay in the question of what do we want. We've got to be able to answer that. And what he's saying is he says, once you have this, you have to be ready to receive it. Let me just share with you what I mean by ready to receive it. There's 3 states of being. Number 1 is a state of a willingness. In order to be ready, you have to be willing. Willing to do what? Whatever is required. A willingness to suspend what you currently believe. A willingness to put down your attachments. A willingness to break the habits that you currently have. a willingness to entertain a new idea, a willingness to commit to something. The second is to be ready for this is a state of faith. A state of faith. Now, it's not blind faith. See, in the beginning, when Patrick gave me this book, I was operating on blind faith, right? I was operating on Patrick's, belief in me. I was acting on borrowed faith, borrowed belief. So I was just going to kind of do whatever he told me to do. It was blind faith. Blind faith will fail you every single time. Because as soon as you face a really challenging time and you fail, blind faith, out the window. But what we want faith based on understanding. We want to have faith, but we want to have faith based on an understanding, a knowing inside of us, a more than heightened level of awareness. Faith based on understanding of who we are. Faith based on an understanding of whose we are, of our awareness of our oneness with God. Faith that, if I've been given this idea, if I've been sourced with an idea, that I've been resourced to bring this idea forward from the source of the idea. And then lastly, a state of desire. He dedicates an entire chapter to desire, and that's truly where I think the secret of the book is. The secret is how do we take what we know what it is that we want, that starts out as a want and a wish, and how do we transmute that energy from a want to a wish to a desire, then to a burning desire, and then ultimately into an all-consuming obsession. And he'll talk about that all throughout the book. You'll see that sentence and that phrase, all-consuming obsession. I want to be mindful of the time. Let's go over on line 90. And again, if you send an email to info@paulmartinelli.net on Monday, my team will send you the teaching notes, and we'll give you a digital copy of the book for free and another resource. Just send an email to info@paulmartinelli.net. But he says, a peculiar thing about the secret is that those who once acquire it and use it find themselves literally swept onto success with but little effort, and they never again submit to failure. If you doubt this, study the names of those who have used it, wherever they are mentioned, and check their records for themselves. He says it cannot be had at any price. In other words, you can't buy it, although price is far less in its value. He says it can't be had at any price by those who are not intentionally searching for it. It can't be given away. It can't be purchased for money. He says one part already is in possession of those who are ready for it. He says, again, education has nothing to do with it. He says on line 130, he says, I've never known anyone who was inspired to use the secret who did not achieve noteworthy success in their calling. When I had an opportunity for our Future Proof program to interview Joseph Mcclendon, Joseph talked about this book. He was homeless, living in a box, and a gentleman gave him this book. He did the exercises, he read the book, it became his lifetime companion. And if you look at Joseph Mcclendon, he's top in the world at what he does, side by side with Anthony Robbins. Another reason for you guys jump into Future Proof program. I'm going to end with this one thing. I think this is really important. This is on line 171. He says, a final word in preparation before you begin the first chapter. May I offer one brief suggestion which will provide a clue by which Carnegie's secret may be recognized. He says, all achievement, all earned riches have their beginning in an idea. In an idea. I don't know what your dream is. I don't know what your idea is. I don't know what you're focusing on, but this is what I know. Any idea will work. Any idea will work if you're willing to do the work. I hope this has helped. Just send an email, info@paulmartinelli.net. Thanks for joining me today. I'll see you next Saturday. Be well. God bless. Bye-bye.